the void whispered, not with the rustle of cosmic dust or the distant murmur of nebulae, but with the chilling echo of a galaxy in retreat. For centuries, the Xylos Concordance had been the undisputed arbiter of stellar peace, their ancient technologies and intricate social structures a testament to millennia of advanced civilization. Now that peace was crumbling, devoured by the Chrono-Scourge. It wasn't an invasion, not in the traditional sense, but a slow, inexorable unraveling of existence itself. Star systems, once vibrant with life, simply ceased to be, leaving behind nothing but unsettling temporal anomalies and dead, silent space. On the fringes of a sector still clinging to the Concordance's fading influence, the Starstrider cut a solitary figure. A sleek, unconventional vessel born of human ingenuity, she was on a deep space mapping mission, a testament to humanity's insatiable curiosity. Humanity, or the Sol Federation as they called themselves, was a relatively new player on the Galactic stage. Their short history was often viewed by the Xylos with a mix of academic interest and condescending amusement. Their methods were unconventional, their ethics bafflingly idealistic. Commander Ayla Roric stood on the Starstrider's bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic star chart. The grim purple tendrils of the Chrono-Scourge spread across the display, each pulse signifying another system lost. Roric was a pragmatist, yes, but beneath her calculated demeanor beat a heart that felt the weight of every lost world. She ran a hand through her close-cropped dark hair, a restless energy about her. "Commander, incoming distress call," announced First Officer Jax Kalin, his voice a measured calm that often grated on Roric's more impulsive nature, yet was undeniably essential. Heavily encrypted Xylos origin. Fringes of the Cathar system, sector row 7. Roric turned, her brow furrowed. Cathar? That's deep in a contested zone. The Concordance hasn't acknowledged any viable assets in that region for weeks. Exactly. Jax confirmed, his sharp features etched with concern. Standing orders are clear, Commander. Avoid direct engagement with Concordance Scourge conflicts. We're an exploration vessel. And what good is exploration if there's no galaxy left to explore, Jax? Roric countered, a flinty resolve entering her tone. The Xylos, for all their supposed wisdom, seemed paralyzed by their own rigid protocols, watching as their empire dissolved. Humanity, she felt, had a different philosophy. When protocols failed, you made new ones. Patch it through. See if we can get a clear signal. The call was a fragmented wail, barely coherent through the static. A voice, high-pitched and strained, pleaded for assistance, mentioning a research outpost, critical data, and a rapidly expanding temporal collapse. The urgency in the alien's voice, despite the garble, was palpable. Roric listened, her internal compass swinging decisively. This wasn't just another skirmish, this was something more, a last desperate gasp from a dying world. Set a course for Cathar, maximum warp, prepare all emergency response protocols. Jax's protest was immediate. Commander, with respect, this violates every directive. We're putting the Starstrider at undue risk for a lost cause. Ayla Roric met his gaze, her own unwavering. Jax, sometimes the greatest risk is doing nothing at all. This isn't just about the Concordance anymore, this is about everything. If there's a chance, no matter how small, we take it. Her decision was made, driven by an ethical imperative that transcended tactical caution. The Starstrider hummed, accelerating into the whispering void, a tiny beacon of defiance against the encroaching silence. The journey to Cathar was a perilous dash through increasingly unstable space. Temporal distortions shimmered like heat haze around the Starstrider, making navigation a nightmare. Dr. Eris Thorne, Chief Science Officer, reported growing temporal eddies that threatened to tear the ship apart, yet Ayla pushed them onward, the desperate alien plea echoing in her mind. When they finally dropped out of warp, the sight before them was horrifying. Xylos Outpost 7 Gamma wasn't just damaged, it was being consumed. A swirling vortex of compressed time and warped space gnawed at its edges, pulling chunks of the station into an oblivion from which nothing could return. The familiar, elegant, Xylos architecture was twisted, stretched, and fractured, a monument to their losing struggle against the Chrono-Scourge. Scans indicate multiple life signs highly stressed within the central research module, Jax reported, his voice tight. But the structural integrity is failing fast, Commander. We have minutes, not hours. Prepare a shuttle. Medical and engineering. Teams. Jax, you have the bridge. Xylar, you're with me. Ayla's orders were sharp, decisive. Xylar Vox, the Starstrider's chief engineer, was already assembling a portable diagnostic kit, his broad shoulders and steady hands reassuring. They boarded a shuttle, the small craft buffeted by the temporal currents radiating from the outpost. Inside Outpost 7 Gamma, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and something indefinably wrong. The faint, acrid tang of space-time tearing. They found a handful of Vaxian scientists, a client species of the Xylos known for their intricate biological and temporal research, huddled in a rapidly decaying data core. Their insectoid forms, usually elegant and precise, trembled with terror and exhaustion. One Vaxian, taller and more ornate in her crystalline adornments than the others, looked up as the humans entered. This was Chief Researcher Laraxa, her multifaceted eyes narrowed in suspicion. Humans, she chirped, her voice a series of rapid clicks and trills that the universal translator barely rendered coherent. The Concordance sent children? Her tone dripped with disdain, even amidst their shared impending doom. Commander Ayla Roric, Sol Federation, we received your distress call. We're here to help. Ayla kept her voice calm, her posture open despite the Vaxian's obvious scorn. What are you trying to transmit? Laraxa gestured frantically with a delicate appendage towards a flickering console. The data. It's critical. The Chrono-Scourge. It's not what they believe. It's temporal resonance. A consuming feedback loop. We found a vulnerability, but it's incomplete. Fragmented. Even as she spoke, a section of the floor buckled and collapsed into the swirling vortex outside, the shriek of tortured metal echoing through the module. Panic flared among the Vaxians. Xylar, can you stabilize this long enough to extract their data? Ayla asked, ignoring Laraxa's barely concealed contempt. Xylar was already at the console, his eyes scanning the chaotic readings. Maybe. Their systems are archaic, but if I can reroute auxiliary power through our portable field dampeners, it'll buy us minutes, tops. As Xylar worked, sweat beading on his brow, Laraxa watched, her initial scorn slowly replaced by a flicker of grudging admiration. The human moved with an almost reckless speed, bypassing protocols and patching circuits in ways the Vaxians, steeped in generations of rigid methodology, wouldn't dare. Ayla, meanwhile, maintained a steady stream of reassuring words to the terrified Vaxians, keeping them focused. Just as the module groaned ominously, threatening to give way entirely, Xylar gave a grunt of triumph. Got it. Data transfer initiated. It's fragmented, but it's coming through. Laraxa's segmented head turned fully to Ayla, her multifaceted eyes wide. You managed it. Impossible. The words were laced with disbelief, but also a nascent recognition. The Starstrider's alarms blared, signaling imminent structural collapse. Not impossible, Ayla said, pulling Laraxa towards the waiting shuttle. Just unconventional. Let's go. We have a galaxy to save. Back aboard the Starstrider, the recovered Vaxian data was a puzzle of encrypted temporal equations and biological schematics. The air in the science lab hummed with the focused energy of humans and the few surviving Vaxians, Laraxa included, who had reluctantly accompanied them. It's incredible, Dr. Aristhorn muttered, hunched over a hollow table displaying a dizzying array of temporal signatures. His usually neat hair was disheveled, a testament to the hours he'd spent poring over the alien data. The Vaxians were right. The Chrono-Scourge isn't simply consuming matter. It's rewriting local causality, tearing the very fabric of space-time, leaving behind null space. Laraxa, perched beside Thorn, added, Our research indicated it operates on a principle of temporal resonance. a self-amplifying feedback loop that corrupts time itself. It's not just destroying, Commander, it's undoing. The implications were chilling. An enemy that could erase the past, present, and future of a star system. But the Vaxian data also hinted at a terrifying counter-strategy. They proposed disrupting this resonance, Thorn continued, tapping a series of complex diagrams onto the display. By introducing a counter-frequency of temporal energy, theoretically, you could destabilize the Scourge's coherence. But the sheer scale and precision required. The Vaxian notes here indicate the Xylos Concordance deemed it theoretically impossible, too dangerous and requiring energy output beyond anything known. Ayla stared at the projection, a grim line to her mouth. Impossible for them, perhaps, but what about us? She turned to Xylar. Our temporal displacement field generators, the ones we use for long-range, safer FTL jumps. Could they be reconfigured? Amplified? Xylar rubbed his chin, a thoughtful expression on his face. They're designed for controlled, localized temporal shifts, to generate a disruptive counter-frequency on the scale the Vaxians theorize. We'd be pushing them far beyond their design parameters. It'd be like trying to stop a tidal wave with a squirt gun, then trying to turn the squirt gun into a nuclear reactor in the process. But it's a possibility, Ayla pressed. Even a slim one. Lyraxa let out a series of clicks that sounded like exasperation. The energy required would destabilize any known vessel. You speak of self-immolation. We're talking about the collapse of the galaxy, Lyraxa. Ayla responded evenly. What's the alternative? Retreat? Surrender to an enemy that erases your very history? She gestured to a horrifying projection that Thorn had called up. The Chrono-Scourge, advancing relentlessly towards Varkos Prime, the Xylos capital. At this rate, Varkos Prime falls within a galactic cycle. The Concordance is losing. They need an impossible solution. Ayla made her decision then, the weight of a dying galaxy settling on her shoulders. Eris, Xylar, I want preliminary schematics. How do we adapt our temporal displacement generators to this new purpose? Lyraxa, your insights on temporal resonance are invaluable. Work with Thorn. Her next words surprised even Jax Kalen. I'm contacting the Xylos Concordance High Council. We're going to present this impossible solution to them. Jax paled. Commander, they'll laugh us out of the comms array. They see us as an unproven species. They'll never agree to such a reckless plan, especially from us. Ayla Roric met his gaze, a glint of defiance in her eyes. Then we'll just have to convince them. Because if we don't, there won't be anyone left to laugh. She was about to propose an act of galactic heresy, an unthinkable gamble that went against every Xylos, tenet of caution and measured response. But humanity, she knew, had always thrived on the impossible. The Xylos Concordance High Council chamber on Varkos Prime was a vast, austere space of gleaming obsidian and shimmering light sculptures. The air was thick with ancient gravitas and barely concealed panic. Grand Arbiter Xylos VI, a being of immense age and almost terrifying stoicism, presided over the gathering of Elder Xylos and their vassal species. Their multifaceted eyes, usually filled with serene wisdom, now held a deep, profound weariness. When Commander Roric, accompanied by Dr. Thorn, Xylar Vox, and a distinctly uncomfortable Lyraxa, appeared on the central holographic platform, a ripple of disdain ran through the assembled counselors. A young human addressing the venerable Concordance, it was almost an insult. Grand Arbiter, esteemed counselors, Ayla began, her voice steady despite the weight of their collective gaze. We come bearing critical intelligence regarding the Chrono-Scourge and we believe a viable counter-strategy. A guttural huff emanated from a portly Xylos counselor. The Sol Federation presumes to offer solutions where millennia of Concordance wisdom have failed. Your species is barely out of its stellar nursery, human. Ayla ignored the barb. Our data, recovered from Outpost 7 Gamma, corroborates Vaxian research. The Scourge is a temporal resonance phenomenon, not a simple energy drain. And the Vaxians had theorized a method of disruption. She gestured, and Thorn uploaded the raw Vaxian data, projected across the chamber in intricate, incomprehensible schematics. A collective murmur of shock and confusion went through the council. They recognized their own Vaxian research, but the implications of a disruption rather than a containment were radical. "The method you speak of," Grand Arbiter Xylos VI finally spoke, his voice a low, resonant rumble, "was deemed theoretically impossible, catastrophically dangerous. It would require temporal energy manipulation on a scale that would risk unraveling the very fabric of local spacetime. Even if it were feasible, what mechanism would generate such a precise counter-frequency?" Ayla took a deep breath. "Our temporal displacement field generators can be modified, amplified. With precise calibration using the Vaxian resonance models, we believe we can generate the necessary counter-frequency." A chorus of derisive clicks and snorts erupted. "A human ship? Designed for trivial FTL jumps? You speak of galactic salvation with nursery toys," spat another counselor. Laraxa, until this point a silent, uncomfortable observer, finally stirred. Her vocalizer clicked rapidly, drawing all eyes to her. "Counselors, Grand Arbiter, while the humans' proposed methodology is unorthodox, the data regarding the Chrono-Scourge's temporal resonance is unequivocally accurate. My colleagues perished to transmit this, and they extracted it from the failing outpost using methods that defied all Vaxian engineering parameters. They showed adaptability." Her voice was hesitant, strained, but her words carried weight. She still doubted the execution, but she could not deny the data or the human's ability to achieve what her own species deemed impossible. The Grand Arbiter's expression remained unreadable, but a flicker of something, perhaps desperation, crossed his ancient features. The Concordance was indeed on the brink of initiating a full-scale retreat from several core systems, having accepted their imminent defeat. This impossible human solution, audacious as it was the only alternative. To absolute despair, Ayla seized the moment. "Grand Arbiter, we understand your skepticism. But the Scourge is not waiting for your consensus. We are offering a chance, however slim. A chance to fight back against an enemy that eradicates your past, your present, and your future. Give us this chance, let us prove it." Her plea wasn't one of arrogance, but of earnest, desperate conviction. It was a human trait. When faced with overwhelming odds, they didn't just calculate, they fought. The chamber fell silent, the weight of the galaxy's impending doom pressing down. The Concordance had relied on rigid logic for millennia, but now logic offered only surrender. Ayla Roric, an unknown human, had offered them something else, a gamble. The last, desperate gamble. The silence in the High Council chamber stretched agonizingly, until Grand Arbiter Xylos VI finally stirred. His ancient eyes, deep and knowing, scanned Roric, then Laraxa, then the holographic projection of the advancing Chrono-Scourge. Desperation, Ayla realized, had finally trumped protocol. "Commander Roric," the Grand Arbiter's voice was a low hum, resonating through the chamber. "The risks you propose are astronomical. However, the alternatives are unacceptable. The Concordance will grant your Sol Federation a limited opportunity. You will be permitted to attempt this temporal disruption on a designated test system, already abandoned and on the very edge of the Chrono-Scourge's advance. We will provide minimal support and observers. Understand this. Failure will mean not only the loss of your vessel, but the end of any further collaboration." Ayla felt a surge of relief, quickly tempered by the immense pressure of the task ahead. "Thank you, Grand Arbiter, we won't fail." Back on the Starstrider, preparations began immediately. The mood was a potent mix of exhilaration and bone-deep apprehension. Jax Kalin, initially hesitant, now moved with a fierce, quiet determination, coordinating logistics and double-checking every detail. "We're going to make history, Commander," he said, a rare grin breaking through his usual stoicism. "Or become," a footnote in a very short, very sad book. The engineering bay, usually a place of organized chaos, was now a hive of frantic, precise activity. Xylar Vox, covered in grease and sweat, oversaw the delicate recalibration of the temporal displacement. Field generators. We're essentially turning our FTL drives into a localized temporal cannon, he explained to Laraxa, who watched with a mixture of scientific curiosity and deep-seated unease. The margin for error is razor-thin. Dr. Eris Thorne, his face pale, from lack of sleep, worked alongside Laraxa, deciphering the more abstract elements of the Vaxian temporal resonance models. Laraxa, initially aloof, found herself increasingly engaged, drawn in by the humans' audacity and their practical trial-and-error approach to problems. Your species, you do not fear the unknown as my people do, she observed, her multiple eyes fixed on Thorne's rapid calculations. You simply adapt. Ayla moved between departments, offering encouragement, answering questions, and addressing the unspoken anxieties that permeated the ship. She spoke to the crew, reminding them of the stakes of the lives they were fighting for, and of the unique spirit that defined humanity. We are the underdogs, she told them in a ship-wide address. The young ones. But sometimes it's the ones who have nothing to lose, who are willing to dare the impossible, that change everything. A small Xylos scout vessel, containing a team of their own temporal scientists and a diplomatic observer, arrived to accompany them. Their expressions were skeptical, almost pitying. They expected to witness a spectacular failure. As the Starstrider left Xylos-controlled space, heading towards the designated test system, a newly charted patch of void that was already beginning to shimmer with the subtle, insidious distortions of the Chrono-Scourge, Ayla felt the weight of expectation. The galaxy was watching. Her crew was watching. And humanity's future in the wider cosmos, if there was to be one, rested on this single, desperate gamble. The designated test system, a derelict binary star cluster once teeming with proto-life, was now a maelstrom of temporal distortions. The closer the Starstrider approached, the more violent the temporal eddies became, threatening to tear the UAO ship apart. The Xylos observer aboard, a stoic xenobotanist named Elder Tarsus, watched the chaotic energy readings with a mixture of apprehension and grim fascination. Commander, entering optimal deployment zone, Jax Kalin reported, his knuckles white on the con. Temporal field readings at critical saturation, holding steady for now. Initiate temporal displacement field deployment, Ayla ordered, her voice cutting through the rising tension on the bridge. Xyler, Thorne, you have the helm. In the engineering bay, Xyler Vox and Dr. Eris Thorne hunched over their consoles, their faces illuminated by the frantic glow of energy readouts. The modified temporal displacement field generators whined to life, a low, thrumming vibration shaking the deck plates. A shimmering, iridescent sphere of pure temporal energy began to coalesce around the Starstrider, expanding outward. The initial results were terrifying. Commander, massive energy fluctuations, Jax yelled from the bridge. Localized temporal shifts detected throughout the system. Our shields are barely holding. On the main view screen, the void writhed. Stars flickered in and out of existence, then reappeared moments later, displaced. A nebula seemed to age millennia in seconds, then snapped back to its former state. The Starstrider was slammed by invisible forces, alarms blaring. What is happening? Elder Tarsus's voice, usually calm, was shrill with alarm. You are merely amplifying the scourge. This is catastrophic. Call it off, human. But in the science bay, Laraxa's segmented head snapped up, her multifaceted eyes fixed on a specific series of resonance patterns on her console. Wait, no, it's working. In a chaotic fashion, yes, but the Scourge's primary resonance frequency is fluctuating. It's destabilizing, but not yet breaking. She's right, Thorne confirmed, tapping frantically. We're hitting it, but it's fighting back with extreme feedback loops. We need more power, Commander. A full spectrum amplification. Ayla's mind raced. Amplify? That meant pushing the generators beyond their absolute limit, risking catastrophic system failure, perhaps even a temporal implosion that would erase them all. But Lyraxa's certainty, Thorne's confirmation, there was a chance. Xylar, Full power to the temporal field generators, Ayla commanded, her voice steady. Bypass all safety protocols. Lyraxa, calibrate for maximum resonance disruption based on the current feedback. Thorn, synchronize output. A gasp went through the bridge crew. Jax looked at her, his face grim but resolute. He trusted her. Commander, that's insane, Elder Tarsus exclaimed, his antennae drooping in despair. You'll destroy yourselves. We either burn out Elder Tarsus or we watch the galaxy burn, Ayla retorted, her gaze fixed on the view screen. In engineering, Xylos slammed his hand onto the final console. The generators screamed, a high-pitched wail that vibrated through every molecule of the ship. The temporal field intensified, expanding into a vast, shimmering, unstable bubble. The chaotic energy around the ship reached a fever pitch. For long, agonizing seconds, the Starstrider was a tiny speck at the heart of a cosmic storm, buffeted and twisted by forces beyond comprehension. Every warning light flared red. Every alarm shrieked. The very air crackled with raw temporal energy. Then, with a shudder that threatened to tear the ship apart, the chaotic fluctuations outside began to change. The wild, untamed temporal shifts started to coalesce, then diminish. The screaming of the generators subsided, replaced by a low, powerful hum. The Xylos observer, Elder Tarsus, pointed a trembling digit at the view screen. By the ancients. Look, the Chrono-Scourge, which had been a pulsating, cancerous growth on the edge of the test system, faltered. The virulent purple tendrils that stretched into the void wavered, then began to recede. The temporal distortions that had tormented the Starstrider dissipated, leaving behind a scarred but stable emptiness. Where there had been chaos and destruction, there was now a profound, albeit eerie, silence. The Chrono-Scourge in this small pocket of the galaxy had been broken. A collective, stunned silence fell over the Starstrider bridge. Jax Kalen let out a long, shaky breath, leaning against his console. We did it, he whispered, disbelief and exhilaration warring in his voice. From the science bay, Lyraxa's clicks and trills were no longer of exasperation, but of genuine awe. The resonance, it completely collapsed. The scourge unraveled within the localized field. It's astounding. She turned to Thorn, her multifaceted eyes wide. Human ingenuity. It truly is something to behold. News of the Starstrider's unprecedented success spread like wildfire through the Xylos Concordance. A fragile hope, long extinguished, reignited across countless star systems. The Grand Arbiter Xylos VI, speaking from Varkos Prime, addressed the galaxy. His voice, once weary and stoic, now carried a note of profound humility and renewed purpose. The Sol Federation, once dismissed as an unproven species, has achieved what millennia of Concordance wisdom deemed impossible, he announced, his image projected throughout the Concordance territories. They have provided the galaxy with a viable counter-strategy against the Chrono-Scourge. We formally acknowledge humanity's critical role in the fight for galactic survival and request their full cooperation in developing a galaxy-wide counter-offensive. Back on the Starstrider, the crew celebrated, exhaustion giving way to joyous camaraderie. They had stared into the abyss and pulled back a piece of salvation. Ayla Roric, watching them, felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had made a risky call, trusted her gut, and her crew had delivered. Lyraxa approached Ayla, her posture no longer haughty, but respectful. Commander Roric, she chirped, her voice soft. My people, we have much to learn from yours. Our theoretical understanding combined with your unique capacity for improvisation and audacity, it could save us all. I would be honored to collaborate on refining this technology. Ayla smiled, extending a hand, a distinctly human gesture. Lyraxa hesitated for a moment, then delicately touched her own appendage to Ayla's palm, a sign of true respect. The honor would be ours, Chief Researcher, Ayla replied. She walked to the observation deck, looking out at the endless expanse of stars. The Chrono-Scourge was not defeated entirely, not yet. The galaxy still faced an immense, daunting task. But now, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was hope. And that hope, that improbable, audacious hope, had come from the most unexpected corner of the cosmos. From a species once underestimated, now revealed as the true last hope. Humanity, by daring to try the impossible, had just written a new chapter for the entire galaxy.